I sat in the conference room staring at spreadsheets I'd never seen before. My spreadsheets, except they weren't. The numbers were wrong, signatures forged, dates altered. Vanessa Hale, my boss, sat across from me with perfect posture and perfectly styled auburn hair. Beside her, Patricia from HR flipped through pages with increasing concern. "Lena," Patricia said slowly, "these documents show you manipulated the department budget. Can you explain this?" My stomach dropped. The columns were mine, the formatting mine, but the actual figures? Those had been changed. I looked at Vanessa, searching her face for some sign she'd defend me, explain the mistake. Instead, she met my gaze with cold satisfaction. "I'm as shocked as you are," Vanessa said, her voice dripping with false concern. I trusted Lena completely. "This is devastating." My hands trembled as I reached for the papers. Every edit had my digital signature. Signatures I never made, approvals I never gave. This wasn't a mistake, this was a trap. And I'd walked straight into it, exhausted and sick, with no idea she'd been building this case for weeks. "These are serious allegations," Patricia continued, writing notes. I opened my mouth but no words came. How do you defend yourself against lies that look like truth? 3 weeks earlier, I'd been working my usual 12-hour day when the world tilted sideways. I remember reaching for my coffee mug, my vision blurring at the edges. The marketing report I'd been finishing for Vanessa glowed on my screen, due by morning as always. Then my chest tightened. The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright, too hot. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. Someone screamed. I think it was me. The carpet rushed up to meet my face, and suddenly there were hands on my shoulders, voices shouting my name. Through the fog, I heard someone yelling for help. Another person on the phone with emergency services. My last coherent thought before everything went dark was typical. I hadn't finished the report. Vanessa would be furious. Even as my body gave out, I was worried about disappointing her. That's how thoroughly she'd trained me, to prioritize her needs over my own survival. I didn't know then that while I lay unconscious on that office floor, Vanessa was already calculating how to use my collapse to her advantage. I woke up to steady beeping and the antiseptic smell of a hospital. White ceiling tiles, an IV line taped to my arm. Monitors blinked green and blue numbers I didn't understand. My husband Tyler sat beside the bed, his face exhausted and streaked with old tears. "You're awake," he whispered, squeezing my hand too tightly. "Thank God you're awake." My throat felt like sandpaper. "What happened?" "Sepsis," he said quietly. "From a bladder infection you didn't know you had. The doctor said your immune system was so compromised from stress and exhaustion that it couldn't fight it off. You collapsed at work 3 days ago." 3 days. I'd lost 3 days. "The report," I started, but Tyler cut me off. "Stop. Just stop." His voice cracked. "The doctor said if you'd waited even 6 more hours you might not have survived. Do you understand that? You almost died, Lena, for a job, for a boss who hasn't even called to check on you." That last part stung more than I wanted to admit. Vanessa hadn't called. Not once. The doctor came in shortly after, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense tone. She explained the sepsis, the antibiotics, the organ stress. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You need complete rest. No work, no stress. Your body is shutting down because you've been running on empty for too long. If you go back to your current schedule, there won't be a next time. Do you understand?" I nodded, but even then, guilt gnawed at me. I thought about the projects piling up, the emails going unanswered, Vanessa scrambling to cover my work. The rational part of me knew I was sick, that I'd done nothing wrong. But the part Vanessa had carefully cultivated over 2 years, the part that believed I was only valuable if I was useful, that part felt like a failure. Tyler must have seen it on my face because he leaned closer. "Don't you dare feel guilty. You've given that company everything. Now give yourself permission to heal." I wanted to believe him. I tried, but old habits die hard. By day 2 in the hospital, I couldn't resist anymore. I reached for my tablet, telling myself I'd just check one email. Just make sure nothing urgent had fallen through the cracks. Tyler had gone home to shower and grab clean clothes. The nurse had just finished her rounds. I was alone. I opened my email app, watched the messages load. Dozens of unread emails, client questions, vendor invoices. And then I saw it, a notification at the top of my inbox that made my heart skip. Vanessa Hale's account was still synced to my device. Months ago, she'd asked me to monitor her email while she was on vacation, giving me temporary access. I'd never removed the login. She'd never asked me to. Curiosity pulled at me. I told myself I shouldn't look. It was an invasion of privacy. But something nagged at me. Maybe it was the fact that she hadn't called, hadn't texted, hadn't shown even basic concern. I clicked, and my entire world shifted. The first email in her inbox was from her friend, someone named Simone, sent yesterday morning. "She's milking this infection," Vanessa had written. "I can't keep covering for her incompetence. Honestly, Simone, I think she planned this whole thing to get out of work. Convenient timing, don't you think?" My hands shook as I scrolled further. There was more. So much more. The department's a disaster without her picking up my slack, but at least now I can finally get credit for the work I've been doing. Another message, this one from 3 days ago. "Lena collapsed today. Paramedics came. Total drama. I'm exhausted from pretending to care." I felt bile rise in my throat. I kept scrolling, deeper into the rabbit hole, my heart pounding harder with each new message. Then I found the thread that made my blood run cold. A conversation between Vanessa and someone named Felix Ortega, a consultant she'd hired months ago. "We need to move carefully," Felix had written. "If you're going to remove her, you need a paper trail. Start documenting mistakes, even if you have to create them." Vanessa's response already started. "I've been adjusting budget reports and keeping copies with her digital signature. When she gets back, I'll push accounting to investigate." I couldn't breathe. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Vanessa was actively planning to frame me for budget fraud. While I lay in a hospital bed, fighting an infection that nearly killed me, she was building a case to destroy my career. I kept reading, my horror growing with each message. Another email from 2 weeks ago, before I even got sick. "Lena's too detail-oriented. She'll notice the discrepancies eventually, but if she's gone before the audit, I can blame everything on her and clean it up quietly." Gone. She wanted me gone. Another message from a week ago. "How do I make sure she doesn't talk to accounting when she gets back? I need time to finalize the documentation." Felix's reply, "Tell her it's for her own recovery. Limit her access. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." My vision blurred with tears. For 2 years, I'd worked myself to exhaustion for this woman. I'd stayed late, skipped lunches, canceled plans with my husband. I'd believed her when she said we were a team, that my hard work mattered. And all along she'd been using me. Worse, she was planning to sacrifice me to cover her own mistakes. A knock on the hospital door startled me. I quickly closed the email app, heart racing. A nurse entered carrying a vase of roses, deep red, elegant, expensive. My favorite flowers were daisies. These were Vanessa's favorites. "These just arrived for you," the nurse said cheerfully, setting them on the side table. "Someone must really care about you." I reached for the card with trembling fingers. The handwriting was printed. Professional. "Get well soon. We miss you, Vanessa." The nurse left, and I stared at those roses. They were beautiful. They were a lie. Vanessa didn't miss me. She was counting down the days until she could execute her plan. The flowers were part of the performance, evidence she could point to later, proof she'd been supportive and kind. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa herself. "Hope you got the flowers. Don't rush back. Take all the time you need to recover. We've got everything under control here." Everything under control. Because she was busy rewriting history, forging documents, preparing to throw me under the bus. I looked at the roses again, their perfect petals mocking me. Then I opened my tablet and started downloading every single email from Vanessa's account. I created a hidden folder on my cloud storage and saved everything. Every cruel message. Every strategic conversation with Felix. Every piece of evidence showing Vanessa had been overspending the department budget for months and planning to pin it on me. There were emails where she ordered me to adjust the numbers to make quarterly reports look better. Instructions I'd followed, not knowing she was keeping the original versions to use against me later. Messages where she bragged to friends about taking credit for campaigns I'd designed from scratch. I found the smoking gun buried in a thread from 4 months ago. Vanessa had overspent by nearly $50,000 on a failed marketing initiative she'd launched without approval. Rather than admit the mistake, she'd been slowly altering budget documents, spreading the overages across multiple quarters, making it look like gradual mismanagement instead of one catastrophic decision. And every altered document bore my forged digital signature. I sat in that hospital bed, tubes in my arm, and felt something shift inside me. The fear evaporated. The guilt disappeared. What remained was cold, crystalline clarity. Vanessa thought I was weak, that I'd crumble under pressure. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, I walked back into the office. The reception area felt different. Too bright, too loud. Coworkers stopped mid-conversation when they saw me, their expressions a mix of relief and awkwardness. Nobody knew quite what to say to someone who'd nearly died at their desk. Vanessa appeared almost immediately, her heels clicking across the tile floor. She wore a cream blazer and a practiced smile. "Lena? You're back!" She pulled me into a hug that felt like a performance. "We've missed you so much. How are you feeling?" "Better," I said quietly, keeping my voice neutral. "Still tired, but better." "You're so brave for coming back," she gushed, loud enough for others to hear. "Don't push yourself too hard, okay? Your health comes first." The lie rolled off her tongue so easily, I wondered how many times she'd practiced it. I smiled back, matching her false warmth. "Thank you for the flowers, they were beautiful." "Of course, I wanted you to know we care." She squeezed my shoulder. "Come on, let's get you settled in." As we walked to my desk, I caught several people watching us with curious expressions. They had no idea they were witnessing the beginning of something Vanessa couldn't see coming. An hour later, Vanessa called me into her office. She gestured for me to sit, then closed the door, something she rarely did. "I want to talk about your transition back," she began, her tone shifting from warm to businesslike. "I've been handling most of your responsibilities while you were gone, and I think it makes sense to keep some of those duties off your plate, for your health." I nodded, waiting. "Specifically, I'm going to manage the budget reports and accounting communications from now on." She continued. "It's a lot of detail work, and I don't want you overwhelmed." Then her expression hardened slightly, the mask slipping just enough for me to see the calculation underneath. "And Lena, please don't communicate directly with accounting anymore. Route everything through me first. It'll prevent confusion and make sure we're presenting a unified front." There it was, the cage door closing. She wanted to control my access to the very people who could expose what she'd done. I met her eyes and forced myself to look grateful. "That makes sense. Thank you for being so understanding." Relief flickered across her face. She thought I'd accepted my role. She thought she'd won. "We're a team," she said, smiling again. I smiled back. "Absolutely." I left Vanessa's office and nearly collided with Martha Green in the hallway. Martha was the head accountant, late 50s, sharp as a razor, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Lena," she said warmly, "I heard you were back. How are you feeling?" "Getting there," I replied. "It's good to be back." Martha studied my face for a moment longer than casual conversation required. Then she lowered her voice. "I want you to know something. If you ever need to talk about anything, my door is open. Accounting might seem like just numbers, but we notice patterns, and sometimes those patterns tell stories people don't want told." My heart skipped. Did she already suspect something, or was she just being kind? "Thank you," I said carefully. "I really appreciate that." She squeezed my arm gently. "I mean it. Anything at all." As she walked away, I felt a spark of hope. Martha Green wasn't someone who made empty offers. She was giving me an opening, one I intended to use. That night, I went home and began organizing the evidence I'd collected. Every email printed and filed chronologically. Every forged document highlighted. Every lie cataloged and cross-referenced. I created a folder, neat and professional, labeled simply, Budget Review, Fiscal Year. The next morning, I arrived at work early. The office was quiet, most people still on their commute. I carried the folder under my arm, thick with papers, heavy with truth. Martha's office door was open. She sat at her desk reviewing spreadsheets, reading glasses perched on her nose. I knocked softly. She looked up and smiled. "Lena, come in." I closed the door behind me and set the folder on her desk. "Vanessa asked me to give this to you personally," I said, keeping my voice steady. "She said it was important you review it before the quarterly audit." It was a lie, but a strategic one. If Martha thought the request came from Vanessa, she'd look at it immediately, and she'd ask Vanessa about it directly when she found the discrepancies. Martha opened the folder and began scanning the first few pages. Her expression shifted from casual interest to intense focus. "These are budget reports," she said slowly, "with annotations." "Yes," I replied. "There are some inconsistencies Vanessa wanted flagged." That much was true, just not in the way Vanessa had intended. Martha's eyes narrowed as she flipped deeper into the folder. I saw the moment she found the emails I'd printed. The color drained from her face. "Lena," she said quietly, "where did you get these?" I'd prepared for this question. "I still had access to Vanessa's email from when I covered for her last year," I said truthfully. "I noticed some concerning communications while I was recovering. I thought accounting should know before the audit." Martha stared at the papers, then at me. She was connecting dots faster than I'd expected. "This shows systematic budget manipulation," she said carefully, "over several quarters with forged approvals." "Yes. And these emails," she held up one of the printed messages, "these show premeditation, planning." I said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Martha closed the folder slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she looked directly at me. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'll handle it from here." "Vanessa said I shouldn't communicate directly with accounting anymore," I added quietly. "She wanted everything routed through her first." Martha's jaw tightened. "I see." She stood, folder in hand. "Lena, I need you to trust me now. Can you do that?" I nodded. "Good. Don't mention this conversation to anyone, not even Tyler. Can you promise me that?" "I promise." She walked me to the door, then paused. "One more thing. When did Vanessa tell you not to contact accounting?" "Yesterday. Right after I got back." Martha's expression hardened. "That's very interesting timing." I left her office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The evidence was in the right hands now. All I had to do was wait. The next few days were excruciating. Vanessa acted normal, cheerful even, checking in on my workload, asking about my recovery. I played along perfectly, responding with gratitude and submission. But I watched her carefully. She was restless. Her eyes kept darting to her phone. She'd disappear for long calls, returning with forced smiles. She was waiting for something. On Thursday, she cornered me in the break room. "Have you talked to Martha this week?" she asked casually, pouring coffee. My heart raced, but I kept my face neutral. "No, why?" "Just wondering. I thought maybe she'd reached out about some budget questions." "She hasn't," I lied smoothly. "Should I follow up with her?" "No." The word came out too fast, too sharp. Vanessa caught herself and laughed. "I mean, no need, I'll handle it." She was nervous. Good. That afternoon the email hit everyone's inbox simultaneously. Urgent, internal audit scheduled, all department heads required. The office erupted in whispers, people huddled in corners speculating. Finance audits were rare, usually triggered by serious concerns. Vanessa's face went pale when she read the message. I watched her hands tremble as she set down her phone. She walked to my desk, trying to look calm. "Did you see the audit announcement?" "Just now," I said, looking appropriately concerned. "Is everything okay?" "Of course," she said quickly. "Just routine, nothing to worry about." The auditors arrived Monday morning, 3 people in suits carrying laptops and boxes of files. They set up in the large conference room, and one by one, department heads were called in for interviews. Vanessa went first. She was in there for 2 hours. When she emerged, her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were red. She walked past my desk without acknowledging me. The CFO, Harrison Brooks, was next. Then Martha. Then several other managers. The office felt like a pressure cooker, everyone whispering theories, nobody knowing the real story. On Wednesday, I was called in. The lead auditor, a woman named Claire Donnelly, gestured for me to sit. Martha sat beside her, expression neutral. "Lena Brooks," Claire said, consulting her notes. "You've been with the company for 2 years, correct? Working directly under Vanessa Hale?" "Yes. We're reviewing department budget records, and your name appears on several documents. Can you walk us through your typical approval process?" I explained honestly how Vanessa would send me reports to format and submit, how I'd process them as instructed, trusting they were accurate. "Did you ever make changes to budget figures yourself?" Claire asked. "Only when Vanessa specifically instructed me to," I said carefully. She'd send emails with revised numbers and ask me to update the reports. Do you have copies of those emails? Some. Yes. In my work inbox. Martha made a note. The interview continued for another 40 minutes. They asked about specific transactions, specific dates. I answered truthfully, providing details, never volunteering information they didn't request. When I left, I felt strangely calm. The truth was simple. I had nothing to hide. Thursday afternoon, everything came to a head. I was at my desk when I heard raised voices from the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see Vanessa standing, her face flushed, gesturing emphatically. Harrison, the CFO, sat across from her with crossed arms. Martha stood by the window, holding a stack of papers. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was clear. They were confronting her. Other people in the office noticed too. Work stopped. Everyone pretended to type while watching the drama unfold. Then Claire, the lead auditor, asked a question I couldn't hear. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed. She looked trapped. Harrison slid a document across the table. One of the budget reports. I recognized it even from a distance. It was one of the forged ones, with my supposedly fake signature. But Martha pulled out another document, the original version, the real one, with Vanessa's actual signature and different numbers. The color drained from Vanessa's face. She sat down heavily. Through the glass, I watched her realize what had happened. The documents she'd altered and blamed on me existed in original form. Martha had found them. The audit had exposed everything. For 2 years, I'd been Vanessa's safety net, her scapegoat. Now the net had holes, and she was falling through. The meeting broke up 20 minutes later. Vanessa walked out, flanked by Harrison and someone from HR I didn't recognize. Her face was stone. She didn't look at anyone as they escorted her past my desk, down the hallway, toward the elevators. The office was silent. Then whispers exploded. What happened? Did she get fired? I heard it was fraud. I sat frozen at my desk, heart pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I'd imagined this moment, but the reality felt surreal. Within an hour, an official email went out. Effective immediately, Vanessa Hale is no longer with the company. Questions should be directed to HR. That was it. No explanation, no details. Just gone. Martha appeared at my desk shortly after, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "Can you come to my office?" she asked gently. I followed her, legs shaking. She closed the door and gestured for me to sit. "It's over," she said simply. The audit found systematic budget manipulation, unauthorized expenditures, and forged documentation, all traced back to Vanessa. She attempted to frame you, but the original documents proved your innocence. Tears burned my eyes. I didn't. "I know," Martha interrupted. "You did nothing wrong. In fact, you saved this company a lot of money and reputation damage by bringing this to light. Harrison wants to thank you personally." 20 minutes later, I sat in Harrison Brooks' corner office. He was in his 60s, gray-haired and intimidating, but his expression was kind. "Lena," he began, "I want to apologize. We failed you. We allowed a toxic work environment to develop and it nearly cost you your life." I didn't know what to say. "You collapsed from exhaustion and illness caused by overwork, and instead of stepping in sooner, we let it continue. That's on us." He slid a document across his desk. "We're offering you 1 week of additional paid leave, effective immediately. When you return, you'll report directly to Caleb Morgan in a restructured department. We're also reviewing your compensation." "Thank you," I managed. "But more than that," Harrison continued, "I want you to know your actions prevented significant financial and legal damage to this company." The audit revealed Vanessa had misappropriated nearly $70,000 through fake vendor contracts and inflated expenses. If you hadn't brought those documents to Martha, we might not have discovered it until the quarterly SEC review, which would have been catastrophic. 70,000. It was worse than I'd thought. "Take your leave," Harrison said gently. "Rest, heal. When you come back, we'll make sure you're supported properly this time." I left his office in a daze, collected my things, and drove home. Tyler was waiting, and when I told him everything, he held me while I finally cried. The week off felt like emerging from underwater. I slept late, cooked meals, took long walks with Tyler. For the first time in 2 years, I didn't check my work email obsessively. I let my body heal, let my mind rest. On the 4th day, Tyler asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Do you want to go back?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said finally. But not to prove anything. Not to make up for lost time. I want to go back because I'm good at what I do, and I deserve to do it in a place that respects that. He kissed my forehead. That's the right answer. When I returned to the office the following Monday, things felt different. Caleb Morgan, my new boss, was the opposite of Vanessa. Collaborative, clear, supportive. He trusted his team and gave credit where it belonged. The department culture shifted almost immediately. People stayed late because they wanted to, not because they were afraid. Meetings became productive instead of performative. I rebuilt my confidence slowly, carefully. Some days were hard. Old habits of people-pleasing and overworking tried to resurface, but I recognized them now. I could stop myself before falling back into destructive patterns, and slowly I remembered what it felt like to enjoy my work again. A year passed. The department thrived under Caleb's leadership, and I earned a promotion to senior manager based on actual merit, not just endless hours. Tyler and I celebrated with dinner at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. Life felt stable, peaceful. Then came the day that would test everything I'd learned. I was on the hiring committee reviewing applications for a new marketing director position. We'd received over 100 resumes from qualified candidates. I was scrolling through them on my laptop when a name stopped my heart: Vanessa Hale. My hands trembled as I opened the PDF. There she was, same photo, same confident smile. Her resume listed our old company and claimed responsibility for campaigns I'd created. Increased holiday sales by 87% through innovative digital strategy, one bullet point read. That campaign had been my idea, my execution, my sleepless nights. Vanessa had taken credit at the time, but seeing her still claim it now made my stomach turn. Other accomplishments listed were equally fabricated. Projects I'd led, initiatives I'd proposed, results I'd delivered. She'd rewritten history completely, erasing my existence from every success. I stared at that resume for a long time, emotions warring inside me. Part of me wanted to march straight to Caleb and expose every lie, but another part, the part that had learned patience and strategy, knew there was a better way. I didn't mention the resume to anyone that day. Instead, I went home and thought carefully about what I wanted. Revenge? I'd already had that. Vanessa had lost her job, her reputation, her career trajectory. Did I need more than that? But this wasn't just about revenge. This was about protecting my current company from someone who'd proven she'd lie, cheat, and destroy others to get ahead. Hiring Vanessa would be bringing a poison into our workplace. The next morning, I reviewed her application professionally. I made notes on the discrepancies between her claims and verifiable facts. I cross-referenced dates and projects with public information. Then I compiled a simple summary document, highlighting concerns about the accuracy of her stated accomplishments. At the hiring committee meeting, when we reached her application, I spoke calmly. I have concerns about this candidate's integrity, I said, distributing my summary. Several accomplishments listed cannot be verified and appear to contradict publicly available information. Caleb reviewed my document, his expression growing serious. These are significant discrepancies. Additionally, I continued, keeping my voice neutral, I worked with this candidate at my previous company. Without going into specifics, I cannot in good conscience recommend her for a leadership position. The room went quiet. Caleb looked at me, understanding dawning. That's a strong statement. It's an honest one, I replied. The committee discussed briefly, but the decision was unanimous. Vanessa's application was rejected. Later that day, Caleb called me into his office privately. That candidate this morning, he said carefully. Vanessa Hale. That was your old boss, wasn't it? The one involved in the fraud investigation? I nodded. I looked her up after the meeting, he continued. Found some industry articles about the audit. She really tried to frame you for her crimes. She did. And now she's applying to work here, lying about accomplishments that were actually yours. He shook his head. The audacity is breathtaking. It is, I agreed. You could have exposed her in that meeting, Caleb said. Told everyone what she did, but you handled it professionally, focused on the facts. That showed real maturity. I learned the hard way that public revenge feels good in the moment but doesn't solve anything, I replied. The best revenge is living well and making sure toxic people can't hurt others. Caleb smiled. You've come a long way since I met you. You were talented but scared back then. Now you're talented and confident. That's powerful." His words meant more than he knew. For 2 years, Vanessa had convinced me my only value came from self-sacrifice. It had taken collapsing, nearly dying, and fighting back to learn differently. I was valuable because of my skills, my ideas, my integrity, not because of how much I could endure. That evening, I sat at my desk after everyone had gone home. Vanessa's resume was still on my screen, her smiling photo mocking me. I could have simply closed it, moved on, but I wanted a moment to acknowledge what this meant. The woman who'd tried to destroy me had come begging for a job under my leadership. She'd applied, not knowing I worked here. Not realizing the person reviewing applications was the same person she'd nearly killed with overwork and then tried to frame for fraud. The irony was perfect. I could have called her, rubbed it in, could have found a way to let her know exactly why she'd been rejected. But that would have required me to think about her more than she deserved. Instead, I simply clicked the status drop-down and selected disqualified. Does not meet standards. The system saved automatically. The application disappeared from the active folder. Gone. Just like she'd tried to make me. I closed my laptop and looked out at the city lights. 2 years ago, I'd been a different person, desperate for approval, willing to sacrifice everything for recognition I'd never receive. That version of Lena would have been terrified of this moment, would have second-guessed her decision, would have worried about being fair. But I wasn't her anymore. I was someone who'd survived, learned, and grown. Someone who knew her worth. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't dramatic, it's living well and protecting what you've built. I left the office and walked to my car under a clear night sky. My phone buzzed, a text from Tyler asking what I wanted for dinner. Simple, normal, beautiful. This was my life now. Not perfect, but mine. Built on truth, not lies. Sustained by respect, not exploitation. I thought about Vanessa sometimes, wondered where she'd ended up. But those thoughts grew rarer, less important. She was a chapter in my story, but not the story itself. The story was about a woman who almost lost everything, her health, her career, her sense of self, who hit bottom in a hospital bed with tubes in her arm and made a choice to fight back not with anger, but with evidence, with patience, with strategy. Who learned that silence can be stronger than screaming, that documents speak louder than accusations, that sometimes the best revenge is simply clicking disqualified and moving on with your life. I drove home through quiet streets, already thinking about tomorrow's projects, next month's goals, the future I was building, one decision at a time. Vanessa had tried to bury me. Instead, she'd taught me something valuable. You can't destroy someone who refuses to stay down. And as I pulled into my driveway, Tyler waiting at the door with that smile I'd fallen in love with years ago, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not because Vanessa lost, but because I'd found myself again. And that victory would last forever.